are listening to LOA Recon with the Good Vibe Coach Jeanette Ma, where we dissect the ins and outs and the art and science of conscious creation, all intended to amp up your manifesting game. Let's have some fun together. Okay, so Harvey and I are in the recording studio, aka the master closet, and Scooby's on the other side of the wall playing with something that is making it really hard for Harvey to be as calm and relaxed as he usually is in here. Apologies in advance if I've got background noise. But I got a question for you today. Actually, it's not a question for everyone. Not everyone struggles with this one, but some do. You'll know whether you are one or not. I'm wondering, is being a good person handicapping your LOA game? Or, asked another way, do good people make bad manifestors? Here's why I'm wondering about this. Sometimes our culture or our communities promote values that don't necessarily support our best LOA game. You know what I'm talking about? That's when it can seem like conscious creators have to choose between exercising strong manifesting skills or earning social approval. So what's a savvy creator to do when socially acceptable values like humility or selflessness or hard work oppose key manifesting principles like self-love and effortlessness? You know what I'm talking about, right? I'd say one can't be faulted for wondering whether embracing social values sabotages their LOA game. I've got a couple of examples. Let's review 7 that I think are super common values that might be worth rejecting or at least navigating really artfully or deliberately. The first one on my list is sympathy, empathy. Oh my gosh. Right? How many conscious creators have had to ask themselves how they should respond when a friend or loved one experiences some sort of disappointment or loss? You know what we know we're supposed to say. I'm so sorry. We might even feel that, but as conscious creators, we know that us giving up our alignment because of what someone else is experiencing doesn't help anyone. Feeling what others are feeling, sometimes that serves us when they're feeling something fabulous, but when they're not, it doesn't. So when we notice that a loved one is feeling bad, joining them in that emotion isn't helping them or ourselves or anyone else. Abraham tells us, you got to tend your own vibration so you have something good to offer. And yet practicing that can make us seem kind of disconnected or cold or uncaring. That can be tricky territory for a conscious creator, because that's a really commonly held up value for a lot of us. Here's another one, selflessness. Putting others' needs and desires first. That's what, it's what good people do, right? In some cultures, not all. But when conscious creators do that, look, we know that gets us sideways of the system right out of the gate. Because we came here to create and nurture our own personal dreams and desires, not to play second fiddle to someone else's. So, we're taught in manifesting circles that it's okay to want whatever we want, and that we've got to be willing to prioritize that. And I will say, sometimes our strongest desire is to be of service to others. But I think it's worth knowing when we're operating from inspiration versus social conditioning, right? Oh my gosh, and look, so many spiritual circles where ego is practically a 4-letter word. Like, you can't be spiritually advanced until you've surpassed or overcome your ego. Oh my gosh. In fact, that's a different episode in itself. I've got strong feelings about that. I won't get sidetracked here. Look, selfish. We got to be selfish. We aren't going to have our best game on if we aren't willing to prioritize what we want, period. Here's another value that sometimes trips us up. Hard work. Not all cultures prize the effort and the struggle, but if you happen to live in one that does, and I'm talking to everyone in America right now, it might be worth going against that grain, because our manifesting success is bolstered by our willingness to let it be easy while we enjoy the journey. Struggle and hard work, that's not, Abraham says unhappy journeys don't have happy endings. That's worth remembering. It's also worth remembering that we can lay on the couch and expect opportunity to knock. It happens every day. I know a bunch of clients, I myself have had, I know they like to say things that make us want to think we have to go out and work hard for it. It's not true. So the next time some muggle calls you lazy, know that your LOA sisters and brothers are cheering you on. Okay, here's another value. Honesty. Gosh, I'm trying not to swear. Telling it how it is, that's a surefire recipe for creating more of what is. We've got to be willing to release an accurate assessment of reality in order to invest our attention in what we prefer. The good news is that can be a private process for those of us who have a strong aversion to being deceitful, what some might consider deceitful or misleading. Or we can confine our practice of it, to our like-minded creators who are in on our game. But I keep my scripting to myself unless I pronounce it as a script. Like sometimes I'll be in session with the client and I'll say something that's partly true, but also partly I want it to be true. So like I'm still talking myself into it, and I will say that's part affirmation, part reality. I got my little disclaimer going, but I'm not super proud of that quality to have to add a disclaimer. I think it has to do with my position, as a coach, as a teacher of these manifesting principles, where people want to know, they want, I don't think they would appreciate, they need to know the difference. At least I think they do. But honesty is seriously overrated in our LOA games, and that's worth acknowledging and practicing in order to manifest what we want. There's another value that trips us up sometimes. That is being realistic or practical. For anyone who's ever been condemned for fanciful or wishful thinking, this one's for you. Life can only be as good as you're willing to let it be. So this is no time to limit our possibilities and our well-being by being realistic. Instead, this is a good time for believing in wild and crazy cool dreams. I think it's a compliment if someone calls you a Pollyanna. That's something worth embracing, worth shooting for. In fact, it reminds me of when, I was coaching with my mentor coach, Gina Gabellini, many years ago when I was building my practice. Well, I was brand new, and she said, well, if you could create anything, what would it be? And I thought it was a trick question. Even though I knew law of attraction, I still thought that was kind of a trick question. But I was like, well, I'll teach her to ask silly questions. If I could create anything, what I would create is a full thriving practice in 1 month. And I thought, well, I've stumped her on that one. Now she's going to have to temper it and say, well, don't be crazy, girl. But she didn't. She said, then that's what we'll do. Then that's what we'll do. Oh, like that was a totally doable goal. Oh, man. And that was, I didn't do it in 1 month. It took 3 months. But that was still way better than what I'd been trained in my LOA it wasn't an LOA coach school. It was coach training, where they laid out very different expectations. They were just being realistic. They wanted everyone to know, I don't mean to shout at you. They wanted everyone to know most of you will fail. The few of you who will be lucky enough to have full-time coaching practices aren't likely to make more than, they said at the time, $30,000 a year. So if you need to make more than that, don't quit your day job. That's what they said. They were just setting us up to be realistic. I understand where they were coming from. Like I said, this was not an LOA-based coach training program. It was muggles. Luckily, I hired a mentor coach who knew to encourage me to entertain those wild and crazy dreams. I can't believe I thought of that as a wild and crazy dream. Once upon a time I did. So yeah, if anyone calls you a Pollyanna, I think it means you're doing something right. Her lead is worth following. All right, another quality that might mess up your LOA game is being knowledgeable. This isn't true in every circle, but there are some circles where this is highly prized. I'm laughing because I used to be a little bit dismissive of a boyfriend who never listened to the news. Never. He was just oblivious to what was happening around the world. I could never talk with him about what was going on because he didn't know anything. And then when I tried to inform him, he would just he didn't care, or he doubted it. He didn't know anything. It was hard to talk to. But you know what? I realized in hindsight, that can really help for a strong LOA game to not know too much. Why do we have so much respect for expert authority? Maybe that's what it is. Some things are they're not worth knowing, like the latest news, or sometimes your bank account balance, or your white cell count, or how much you weigh, or whatever. Numbers might be messing you up. I think it's worth being selective about what we don't know. Some things are helpful to know. Hello, like how to create your reality. Other things, it's worth not knowing. Sometimes that naivety can be our best manifesting advantage. I remember Sharon Wilson, when she was interviewed about how she made 6 figures in her first year as a coach, she said she didn't know she wasn't supposed to. She didn't know everyone wasn't doing that. I love back when I didn't know you were supposed to drive traffic to your website or use SEO to let Google know that you existed. Once upon a time, I didn't know that, and I got great results. Yeah, knowledge, sometimes overrated. Sometimes the best thing, the good skill to have is how to unknow something or be willing to not know it in the first place. Oh, you got to have a strong LOA game to pull that one off and feel good about it. I have high respect for those. And sometimes I am in that category. Sometimes I am. Okay, the last value I wanted to share about worth not embracing is conformity. Look, this is a lot of our circles, whether it's our culture or our society. Sometimes it's our family. Sometimes we learned it from our parents or our teachers, where they want us to stay in line, not rock the boat. We got rewarded for following instructions, for respecting their authority and doing what we were told. But that can be an overrated routine for a powerful creator. We got to be willing to rock the boat and ruffle some feathers and march to a different drummer if that's where our inspiration takes us, because we didn't come here to stay out of trouble and to do it like everyone else was. We can conform ourselves right out of alignment, right out of our joy. Back when I got married because I was supposed to, not because I wanted to. I just knew I was supposed to. I got a lot of examples from my life prior to being LOA aware. Wow. A lot of examples not worth sharing. Look, the bottom line on this is, you don't have to abandon your LOA game to be an upstanding member of society, but if winning the approval of others costs you your alignment, that is not a game worth winning. When being a good person is bad for your manifesting game, that's when it's time to rethink things. Find your own definition of what a good person is, or embrace being society's bad one. Oh, that makes me laugh. I hope you got some manifesting inspiration from this. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.